And we're live.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I am Bart Robley. You are on deck with Rick Stojak, Jeremy Steinkoler, Chip Ritter, and again, my name is Bart Robley. We want to thank you guys for checking out the Drummers Education Connection. And one of the things that we decided to do a while ago when we started this whole thing was we are talking about being a drum teacher, and we're trying to help each other. We're trying to help each other become better drum teachers, and we're trying to help other drum teachers as well. And we're interviewing drummers. We're interviewing drum teachers. We're talking about everything under the planet, drums and drum education. And we decided, you know what better way to kick off interviews than to interview each other, and so that everybody out there that watches this, they get to know us and know what we're about and how we teach and what it is that we do. And so today, the guy in the hot seat, the guy that we are going to interview today and we're going to pick on and make fun of, is Jeremy Steinkoler. I called him Steinkoler yesterday on Facebook. But there he is, Steinkoler. So we decided he should change his, I decided he should change his last name to Steinkoler and play in a metal band, because that's what I would do. But anyway, Jeremy, how are you, my friend? How's it going today, buddy?
It's good. I'm happy to be here every week, and especially today, and share all my tremendous amounts of wisdom with all you guys. Just kidding. I love the deck. I love you guys, and it's an honor to be a part of this.
You know, Jeremy has got so many amazing things. He wrote a book. Rick, hold up his book, Rick. It's called Finding the Groove. He wrote an amazing book.
Finding the Groove.
Oh, there it is, Finding the Groove. He is an amazing drummer in all styles, especially jazz. He is a founding member of the Bandworks school. It is and he'll fill us on 100% on what it is up in the Bay Area. It's a band school that puts groups together. He is an amazing percussionist. I know a lot of times when you think about drums, people will say percussionist, but if you look up Jeremy on YouTube, you look him up on the internet, the guy he's an amazing percussionist. And he also has a thing called the Bay Area frame drum festival that he does, and that, just watching him play some of that stuff in and of itself is amazing. So an amazing author, amazing player, founder of festivals and stuff like that, and also one of the founding members of the Drummers Education Connection. Jeremy is just an amazing guy. So Jeremy, I want to start by asking this question, the question that I think we're all asked when people ask us about our careers. What is it that got you started? How did you start drumming? How did you start going down this path that has led you on to a lifelong passion, obviously, of being a drummer and doing all this stuff? What started it for you?
So when I was 10 years old, my father acted. He was a stockbroker by vocation, but he acted in like community theater musicals. So like at my school, they had this parent organization. They put on a community musical, and I think it was Guys and Dolls or one of those. And he was in it, and the pit band in that production was just the piano player, music teacher of my school, my elementary school, and a drummer. And the entire show, even though my dad was the lead role on stage, I was fixated on the drummer the entire time. And my parents noticed that. My mom was with me, noticed that. And afterwards, he said, "You want to go talk to him?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be really cool." So we went up and talked to this guy. And it turned out he was an instructor at Juilliard, because I grew up in New York City. Man. And I ended up studying with him. He was my first teacher. And that's what got me started, was just watching this guy play the book to Guys and Dolls when I was 10 years old. And then teaching was a whole other story.
What's his name?
Good question.
What's his name?
Name was Mark. His name was Mark Verigi. And about 20 years ago, I was teaching out here in Berkeley, and I had a student come to me, and I said, "Oh, have you taken lessons before?" And he said, "Yeah, I studied with this guy named Mark Verigi." And I couldn't believe it. And it turns out he had moved to San Jose, and I think he's he was or maybe is a percussionist or a principal percussionist in the San Jose orchestra. So he's still around. I haven't reached out to him because I was so young. I only studied with him for maybe 2 years. It was sort of my first drum teacher. So we didn't have like a super strong connection like I did when I was later and as a teenager with my teacher then. But he did get me started, and that was it. That was the beginning.
Very cool. Very cool. Chip, I think you had a question?
No, I was just going to say that you listed off a bunch of his credentials, but not many people know that Jeremy also is the director of the East Bay Drum School. And I was going to ask, I kind of a dumb question, but how did the East Bay Drum School come into fruition? How did that happen?
No, not a dumb question at all. So, I've been teaching lessons since I was in college, since I was 20 years old. Basically, I started teaching part-time. I can tell that story about how I got started later, but as I kept going and kept getting better at it, I started end up with, I had too many students. I had more students than I could handle. This is in my like late 20s, early 30s, I guess. And I had a couple of teenage students who were like my all-stars, who were really, really great drummers and, great communicators. And I thought, wow, these guys would make great drum teachers if they were interested in teaching some lessons. So I asked them if they'd be interested in taking on some of my overflow. And, I would take a cut of the lesson fee from them, and arrange, the scheduling and all that. And I'd give them access to all my materials, and I would meet with them once a month to coach them about how to be a better instructor. So we did that, and they would come in and say, oh, this student's really challenging for this reason and that, or he's already got this so quick, I don't know what to do next. And I would tell them, advise them on how to go. And then, so it started like that. It's just me sort of overflowing students to some of my students, giving them my materials, teaching them how to teach. And then it kind of kept going and ballooning into, getting some of the reputable drum teachers in the area who were looking for students. So, I have a studio that's my main studio, and I call that the East Bay Drum School Studios. And some of the other teachers share it with me. And the dream at some point is to actually open up a facility with multiple rooms and all that, but that's still a ways away. But yeah, so it's happening. It's real. And we have recitals every 6 months, at least during non-COVID times, where all the teachers or some of the teachers, we pool our students together and we rent out a venue in Berkeley and have a concert, where they perform with tracks and stuff.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
So Rick, go ahead, Rick.
So with the East Bay Drum School now, Jeremy, is it basically one studio and then you guys just share it? You get a night, you get a night, you get a night, and that's how it works?
Well,
and
no,
you provide the gear. How does it?
It is one studio, and it's my studio, and it's like whenever I'm not teaching, it's whoever wants to use it can use it. So a lot of the teachers who are part of the East Bay Drum School teach out of their own studios, and then sometimes use my studio when it's available, because it's a pretty sweet setup. I'm always on the deck talking to you guys from my basement, my home studio, where I've got my kit set up down here. But my actual studio down in Oakland is really sweet. It looks a lot more like Rick's. I've got all these amazing photographs on the wall of these famous musicians and a couple of drum kits, and it's pretty sweet.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Hey, so
we'd like to see that one day. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I don't want to jump too far ahead. Let's back up a little bit. And I think all that stuff's great. I've read your book, Finding the Groove, and you talk in there about how you got started teaching. And I love that story. I think it's not only fun, but it's really inspirational to young drum teachers that kind of, not sure how to get their feet wet. Why don't you tell us that story? How did you get started teaching, Jeremy?
So I went to school at the University of Michigan, and I was working in a music shop there for a friend of mine named Steve Osborne. He's still got his shop there in Ann Arbor. It's called Oz's Music, and I love the guy and I love the place. Anytime I go back there, we hang out and play and hang. And there was another guy who was a mutual friend of ours named Jamie Rustling. And Jamie was kind of my mentor. He was a percussionist. He played tabla and congas and pretty much any drum you could put your hands on, he played it, but he wasn't a traps player. And he worked at this other guitar shop down the way. And so he and I would go back and forth and hang out with one another at the shop, just shooting the breeze. And I was over at that place one time. It was called Herb David's Guitars. And this kid came in and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for drum set lessons." And my friend Jamie said, "Oh, I only teach, hand drums, but my friend Jeremy here will teach you drum lessons. And I'm sure he'll charge you the same low rate that I do." And I was like, "What are you talking about, man? I don't teach drums. What are you trying to do to me?" And he said, "Oh man, you'll be great. You'll be great. You're a good communicator. You get back to the basics. You'll have a lot of fun with it, I'm sure." So I said to the kid, I'm like, "Look, I'm like 2 years older than he is, right? He's another college kid." I said, "I don't know what I'm doing. I've never taught drum lessons before, but I'm happy to show you what I know, right? And I'll charge you $10 an hour." So he said, "Sure." And we started meeting, and man, just right away, I just loved it, because as soon as I saw that I could help him get better and enjoy playing and sort of find that same passion that I had. I was like, wow, this is awesome. What a cool thing to be able to share that feeling. And so we kept going, and I started thinking more and more about what I was doing and organizing materials together and thinking about different books and checking out books that I'd never checked out before. And sort of just broadening my teaching chops, just like my playing chops. And then I started and then it was, $10 an hour at the time was pretty good. And then I started putting a flyer up at the store and telling people when they came in that I taught drum lessons, and I raised my rate to $20 an hour. And then I made a little extra money in college, on the side, just teaching some drum lessons. And then when I moved out to California after I graduated, then it was just, I had a couple odd part-time jobs to make ends meet in the beginning. And once I was able to build up my teaching practice, that was it. It's good to go. I've been doing it ever since. Yeah, Chip.
Hey, Jeremy, I got a pretty generic question, but I think I have a good idea what the answer is. But I want to ask, since we're doing the video with you in it, what are some of your favorite aspects of teaching today? Like right now, if you had to say, I like this about teaching, what's your favorite aspect of teaching drums?
If I had to sort of hone in on one aspect, it's pretty much the same thing that's been a common thread all throughout, which is just helping people, find their passion, live a richer life with drums in it, help them on their path, help them become better human beings and not just better drummers.
Wow, right on.
That's
by
great.
Taking seriously their own commitment to this thing. And it could be anything, right? It could be painting or drawing or dancing or whatever. But like, if they're coming into me because they want to learn something that I know that they don't know, they want to develop some skill that I have that they don't, I'm here to show them the path and to encourage them and to help them, invest and just, improve their lives through music.
Great stuff.
One of the things that I got a question for you too. One of the things that I really like about your book is that you go a little bit deeper. Your book actually is it's not an instructional book like here on my music stand. I've got the Nard book of drum solos. It's not an instructional book on how to play the drums. It's more of a book about life, really.
But it's a must read for any drum teacher or drummer.
Completely.
Or musician. Think about, speaking of his book, okay.
It really reminds me of kind of like effortless mastery. It reminds me of that book. It just kind of makes you think. But my question is this: you go into like the thinking behind learning music in that book. It's deep. How do you teach that in a private lesson? How do you approach that kind of thought process in a private lesson when you're working on a swing thing or you're working on rudiments? How do you apply that deeper thinking to a drum lesson?
That's a great question. And you referenced Effortless Mastery, which is a book by Kenny Werner, who's a great New York jazz piano player. I've read that book. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. So the answer to your question is I sprinkle it in little bits at a time. So, I can't sort of lay everything on someone, even they can get it intellectually. It's just too much to sort of process, right? So it's just a little nugget here and there. And as you get through stuff, you start to learn more and more how to practice more effectively, why I'm practicing the things I'm practicing, understanding the big picture as it comes into, it's like, you can see through, when you're a beginner, you can see through this tiny little, it's like you're looking through a long, tube, right? And you can only see a tiny little bit of light. And then as you get better, the focus gets broader and broader, and you can see more and more and understand more and more of the picture. And so, I think that one of the most important things, most valuable things that a teacher can teach a student is how to practice effectively, because so many people spend so much time basically wasting their time, like spinning their wheels, getting frustrated, not making progress. And that's just a recipe for frustration and quitting, right? Who wants to keep working at something when you're not making progress? And part of the reason people don't make progress is they don't know how to practice right, the proper way. And so as a teacher, that's part of the deal, is you have to explain, this is how you work on things and this is why you work on it this way. And so all that sort of deeper, understanding of how to practice effectively and, sort of the deeper things you were referencing. That just comes in little bits at a time.
Rick has a question, and we're
Jim,
and just
do
so
you have
everybody
any,
knows- go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
We're having a little bit of a syncing issue we're trying to work out in our streaming folks, but it's all just fine. But Jeremy, do you have any tips perhaps for teachers or students regarding that? Some quick tips on how to get more effective practice? Any techniques?
Yeah.
I know we do have a previous podcast on that subject that people might want to check into. And then if anybody's checking out the live stream, feel free to ask Jeremy a question on these topics too.
Yeah. Good question, Rick. The first thing, and I know a lot of drum teachers will nod their heads when I say this, is you got to get people playing slower. You got to slow down. Those are probably the two words I say more often than any other to all my students is slow down. You got to have a specific goal, like Chip likes to say. You got to have a specific goal of what you're trying to learn or what you're trying to achieve with the exercise or the plan or the project or the book that you're going through. And you have to break it down into pieces that are absorbable, efficiently and effectively. So people try to do too much. They try to learn a whole passage instead of working on one bar at a time. They try to learn a whole page. I've had people come back after the first couple of lessons and they say, I finished, the first page of stick control. And I'm like, ha ha ha, that's really funny. No, you didn't. As a matter of fact, what you did pretty much was mostly a waste of time. So, you got to know how much to work on what. I'll tell you guys a real quick story to illustrate this. In Bandworks, which we'll talk about, there was a kid once who wasn't a private student of mine. He was 13, good drummer, but was having trouble with this single bass drum, but double 16th note figure in some song. And I suggested to him, I said, hey man, you might consider working out of a book like the Funky Primer, just sort of work on your bass drum chops to get the 16th note syncopations down. And he said, oh, I've already finished the Funky Primer. And I said, wow, really? So you're 13, that's impressive. You've already been through the book already. He's like, yeah, no problem. I said, so if I just sort of pick the book out of here off my shelf and open it up to a random page and point it to a beat, that means you could play it, right? Because you finished the book. And he said, yeah. So I opened up the book and I pointed to a kind of, medium difficult beat, and he couldn't really play it. And I said, and I tried to explain to him, and the light bulb went on for me at the same time with my own students, like, what are you going through this stuff for, practicing, if you can't take it with you? If you can't get it to the point where you can use it, right? You're wasting your time. You're just going through like a math workbook and not really absorbing anything. So it's one thing to play beats. It's another thing to master beats. And so getting to that level of mastery where you can really use the stuff, that's a different thing and requires deeper practice and deeper learning. And so that has to go in much, much smaller chunks than people are used to. Everybody wants that quick gratification where they want to be able to play the Bonham solo real, right off the bat. But it's like, well, before you can run, you got to be able to walk, and you got to walk well. Yeah.
I got a question, Jeremy. On your website, jsteinkoler.com, there's a bunch of information. I've been reading through your bio, and it says that you've played the Monterey, San Francisco, and Sonoma jazz festivals. And one of the other things that stood out to me on your bio was a master of second line syncopation. Where did your first experience with second line come in, and can you elaborate a little bit about that for our viewers, like your experience with jazz second line and New Orleans style of drumming? Where did that come from, and how did you get into that?
Yeah, sure. That's like, we haven't talked about this yet, but that's actually like my home base, like funk and New Orleans second line. That's the stuff that I love and feel like I'm really, really good at.
Second line's awesome. Love second line drumming.
Yeah.
So when I was out here in California, I guess it was the early 90s, I joined a band called Hot Links, which was a New Orleans R&B band. And I really didn't have a whole lot of exposure to that music before. I'd listened to some. Professor Longhair and Dr. John had some of those albums, but I hadn't like really gotten deep into it. And I had to learn to play this music that was required of me in this band. So I just started digging deep. It was like the perfect vehicle for me to like check out recordings, learn the stuff, go back deeper to the early brass bands, Olympia Brass Band and Dirty Dozen and all that. They were later, but I ended up actually playing with some of the guys from the Dirty Dozen on a couple of gigs.
Wow.
Great. Yeah. And recording with Kirk Joseph, who's the sousaphone player. Great guy. Just love that guy to death. He's on a couple of my Mophone albums with us. and we've gigged with him. So anyways, yeah, so that was it. I was in a band that required me to learn it, so I learned it. I got deep in, I listened to it, I loved it, and then I just got really good at it.
That's great. I got a question for you in regards to that, because one of the things that you talked about was, that we all talk about is playing slow down. Don't be in a hurry to get something. And when you talk about something, a subject, as deep as second line drumming, I mean, that in and of itself can be a lifetime commitment. You can do that with any style of music. Right. How do you know when a student is ready to go from, or how do you tell a student when they're, from, okay, take it from here, and now go ahead and try to and apply that on the bandstand, or apply that with the group, or apply that with what you're doing, because that in and of itself that's hard. How do you do that? How do you do that, Jeremy?
Also, you guys are full of really good questions today. I was just talking about this yesterday with one of my students, where he was saying, like, I can play sort of a simple groove along with the song, and I can do the parts like note for note, like if I'm reading the chart. But if I just had to like wing it or improvise, like I can't use that stuff yet in my playing. I can't apply it. And I said, there's this edge that we all have about what we can. There's sort of that boundary between what we can do comfortably and what we have to reach for when we're playing. And I said, and you got to practice reaching in the safe environment of your home, with your recordings or whatever, so that you sort of get a really clear idea about what you can do and what is not reliable. So, because when you're playing on the bandstand, you want to play what's reliable for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be reaching for stuff that's iffy, 50-50, that you're going to pull it off. So you want to get comfortable knowing where that limit is with whatever aspect of your playing it is. It might be in your grooves and how complicated you can get your syncopation of your bass drum. It might be in your fills, and can you pull off that 32nd note flourish, right? So just to sort of become more aware of that through playing, playing like at home, just playing. So many of my students are really good practicers, but not necessarily the best players. And I always encourage them. I said, you got to spend some time just playing the drums. I practice everything I give you. Yes, please. That's awesome. You're a rock star for doing that. And spend 15 minutes a day, at least, just playing the drums. And because when you're just playing and not trying to practice anything or read anything or regurgitate anything, you end up sort of tapping into the things that the skills that you've been developing, and you learn to be comfortable accessing them and improvising with them. And even though, I don't know about you guys, but I've transcribed like over 1,000 songs, drum charts. I've got these massive binders of charts that I've written, and I most of the time send students through these tunes. Right? They learn the chart, they learn the part, they play it just like on the record, note for note. But that's not ultimately where we want to get people. We want to get people to be able to make that part up, to make it sound good and make it feel good, even if they're playing it different. Right? So. You could take 5 of the best drummers in the world, and if you sat them down to play the same song that they'd never heard before, they're all going to play something different. Right. So I always try to hammer this home, that there's no one right way to play anything. You got to bring the right qualities to it to make it sound good. Duke Ellington said, if it sounds good and it feels good, it is good. And to me, that's kind of where it ends. No one cares. There's no police out there saying, oh, you missed that open hi-hat on the 4th measure.
Right. I think that for me, on a personal note, I don't think it's the how hard something is to do. I think it's just that, like Duke Ellington said, if it feels right. I mean, the Beatles, the fact that Ringo went doon da da doon blah blah doon da da doon blah blah doo da da snare tom, it's not. It's not rocket scientist, but the fact that he thought to do that is genius.
Right.
And that's
Creative
one
genius.
Example. And that's I think that when you're as a teacher, you kind of do take it to that. It has to come from here. Don't force it on the bandstand. It has to come from here. It doesn't come from here. It comes from here. Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? I want to throw this out because Rick touched on this a second ago. There's some lag issues from time to time here, and I can see Rick down there chomping at the bit. We're all going like this, raising our hands so we don't talk over each other. So Rick, here it comes. Ask your question, buddy. Go.
All right. Jeremy, I would love to see those charts that you've transcribed, and I'm wondering if those are available for download or for sale, if you've or if that might be something in the future.
Um,
And
they're
then I have
not
a
available.
part 2 question to explain what second line drumming is too.
Okay. I don't, they're not available for download online. I transcribed them for Bandworks, which is the school rock and roll program that I started in 1993. And drummers were taking the program, and, you know, my friend Steve, who I started this program with, he would write out the chord charts for the guitar players and bass players. And I, you know, decided I would transcribe the drum parts for the drummers. And, so, you know, whatever, hundreds of charts. And, you know, eventually I started realizing that most of the, you know, as in the beginning, I was teaching all the classes with him. It was just the two of us for like 10 years, teaching all these classes together, rock band workshops. And then eventually we stopped teaching and hired other teachers to teach. And now we just pretty much run the business. And I realized that when I wasn't there and sort of like holding the hands of the drummers, most of them weren't even reading. And so I was working hard to put these charts together for students that weren't even using them. Or some of the students that would use them, they'd be so buried in the chart, they're not even listening to the rest of the band. You'd see them on stage, you know, with their head buried in the chart, and like, oh, that's not the way to do it. So I kind of stopped and I slowed down, which was good because I needed to have a life. But I still have all these charts. Now, there's a guy named Nate Brown who runs a site called onlinedrummer.com, and they sell drum charts, transcriptions of songs. And he and I got in contact a couple of years ago, and I told him that I had this massive library, and he said, well, you know, if you want, you could clean those up, put them all on Sibelius on a computer chart, and but you've got to transcribe, you know, the entirety of every tune, you know, none of these repeats, and it's mostly the same. So, which is the way I had done it. So I've been in the process. I've probably done maybe 8 of them so far, where I'm cleaning up these charts one at a time and putting them on onlinedrummer.com, and then they're for sale, and I get a half the proceeds of those. But I still use all my charts for my students. Yeah.
Cool.
Very, very.
Yeah,
Jeremy.
cool. Yeah.
I can't get off the second line subject. I've got so many questions about this, and I just keep thinking to myself, for the younger viewers, or maybe people who are watching this that haven't performed live in different areas, what is it like to perform at a jazz festival? What was that like? What was that experience like? And tell us a little bit more about the festivals you've played.
Sure. Well, I'll say the biggest and most sort of renowned festival I've played is the Monterey Jazz Festival, which is pretty world famous. And I played there twice. And the best, I tell you, the guys, the best feeling about playing that first gig was that the guy called me to book my band instead of me trying to get the gig. I got a call from the director of the Monterey Jazz Festival. I was like, hey, are you Jeremy with MoPhone? We want to have you guys at the festival. And I was like, are you kidding me? Oh my God, that's amazing.
That's
so
awesome.
It was great.
Way to go.
And the gig itself was also fantastic. I mean, what?
Were you nervous? Was it like a big butterflies moment? Was it?
No, I mean, we were on the little, you know, the tiniest little stage, you know, near the food court. It wasn't like a big.
Doesn't matter.
I know, but I was, just to say, I wasn't super nervous because it wasn't like, you know, there was an audience of thousands of people just, you know, waiting for you to play. We were sort of the side, you know, the smaller stage, but it was still, so I wasn't particularly nervous at that. It was fun. That's such a fun band for me to play in. It's called MoPhone, MO''FONE, and it's just 2 saxophones and drums. That's it. That's the whole band, the trio. And we do kind of funk and a lot of New Orleans stuff and some weird jazz stuff.
Yeah, you're stanky, man. You're stanky.
Thank you. That's a high compliment coming from you, my friend.
Yes. Yes.
So, but MoPhone is just a fun, irreverent band, and so we just have a blast every time we play. And so I don't. That gig wasn't giving me butterflies. It was more excitement. And then the SF Jazz Festival, we've probably played, I don't know, 10 times over the years at various venues, including at their flagship center that they started in San Francisco. Now it's a killer venue, world class. We played there in the lab a couple of times, and that's been awesome.
If I could change directions real quick without changing too much of the subject, your book, Finding the Groove, I've read it 3 times. I had to read it 3 times to absorb it because it's so deep. It's like a you guys who are watching this, you might want to go check out his book, Finding the Groove on Hudson Music. It's definitely a must read for drummers, musicians, drum teachers, people that are new to the instrument and interested in the life path and a life journey. What got you started? What gave you the idea or inspiration to even start writing a book like that? Where did the genesis of Finding the Groove come from?
So in my teaching practice, I'm teaching, stuff, technique, method, right? All the stuff we all cover, the guts of playing the drums, rudiments, rolls, reading, repertoire, all that technique. But like Bart was asking about earlier, how do you sort of impart this wisdom, while you're teaching these sort of mechanical things? And, part of it is teaching people how to teach. But then for my more advanced students, how to learn and how to practice. And then for my more advanced students, sometimes the focus shifts to like, creative voice, and vision and concept of what you're trying to do with the music, and are you playing like, Elvin style triplets, or are you doing Max style doubles, when you're comping. And I started telling stories, in my teaching, and like sometimes it'd be about a gig I had and where, it was a terrible gig, but I learned this from it. And that was a good takeaway that was relevant to the lesson I was teaching in that moment. Maybe a student comes in and says, what do I do when the bass player's dragging? Or what do I do when, everybody's looking at me, but I feel like I'm in time and I think everyone else is slow. Or, I'm trying to start a band, but, the guitar player's giving me grief about, I'm being too bossy, right? It could be anything, like all over the map with this stuff. And I had the answers from my own experience. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to put in a book, like, a collection of all these nuggets of wisdom that I've learned that I wish I had known when I was younger, to share with my students and anybody who's on this path. And so that's how the idea got started. And when it first hit me that I was actually going to write it, I went to my computer and I stayed up till 3 a.m. just doing a quick brain dump, or a long brain dump, of all these different subjects, all these different topics of things that I wanted to talk about. And it was, 20 pages long, and each line was just one topic, like a whole chapter could be each line, right? And in the end, I had to, cut it down a lot because there's just too much stuff. So I'll have to write a second book for the next one. But
yeah,
that's how it got started.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate how you in the book, how you share your experience, strength, and hope as a musician. And it could just be like that book really got potential for wide appeal, because again, it's not just about the drumming, it's about your relationship to music,
right,
and your journey. And I love that book. Thanks again for sharing that with me.
Dude, Chip, thank you for coming from you. That means so much, man. I think you're
definitely a must get. You guys got to get that book.
That book reminds me, I said effortless mastery a while ago, but there was a book back in the 80s that inspired me. It's called The Platinum Rainbow. And it was basically a book of how to put a band together, and I've always enjoyed stuff like that because, when you're younger and you're trying to come up and like, how do I make this happen? You're seeking the knowledge. But when you've done it for a number of years, you have the knowledge and you want to pass it on. And one of the things that you said right there, Jeremy, that I wanted to hit a point on, and that is this. You said, you learned something. It wasn't the greatest gig, but I learned something from it. And personally, I think that some of the greatest lessons in life, but much less music, is learning from, the bad things. We learn from good things, but a lot of times when things happen in your life that aren't so great, you got to do that 180 and go, okay, don't do that. And you learn from that. And it could be a bad gig. We've all played gigs where it was like, this is awful. Why am I doing this? And then you learn from that. You pass that on to your students. And I think that's what you do in that book so well. That's great.
Thank you.
You bet. I do have this, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to hog the time. I want to say this though, for people that are watching, I want to kind of go back to the second line thing, who are, let's say there's younger drummers or somebody that's new to drumming or just a musician in general, and they don't know what second line drumming is. We've referenced New Orleans. and we've referenced jazz. Please explain what is second line drumming? Where does it get its origin? It's kind of dark and weird where it comes from. Could you explain that? Because I think a lot of people
Sure.
might enjoy that. What is second line drumming?
So in New Orleans, the tradition down there when people die is they have a funeral, and on the way to the funeral, there's a brass band that plays, and they do a slow marching dirge behind the hearse, sort of driving through town, and people that know the deceased come out and mourn, and join in this solemn walk toward the cemetery. And then afterwards, on the way back, they break into a celebration. So there's the solemnity, and then there's a celebration that follows, and the celebration is the band picks up kind of like a double time, marching bump 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 bump, right? And the parade goes through town, and remember in the parade there's the snare drummer and then there's a bass drummer, and sometimes the bass drummer will have a pair of cymbals that clap together on top, or would play with a metal rod or whatever, and then you get the snare drummer doing kind of rudimental kind of marching, swinging stuff, kind of like that Wilcoxon stuff that we got into, Bart. Sort of
Right.
early swing, rudimental drumming, and revelers join in. And when they join in, they'll be shaking their keys or playing a cowbell or a Coke bottle, or clapping their hands together and, raising their umbrellas up and down. And that's the second line. So the first line is the band, and the second line is the revelers that are joining in and adding all the syncopated percussion sort of on top of it. So when you're playing second line New Orleans drumming as a drum set player in a band, your job is to try to kind of get the boom 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 boom, or boom 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 with the clave and the bass drum, and then you're adding that kind of syncopated swingy stuff on the snare, and then you're throwing in rim shots and clicks and hi-hat splashes to sort of emulate that multi-layered syncopated feeling. So it's kind of like multi-layered is a good way to put it. You got the sort of core clave rhythm that you're working off of, and then you're doing all the syncopation around it.
Cool.
What would be a good example of second line drumming on your recordings from Mophone that we could go look up later?
Oh, that's a great question. So again, Mophone is MO''FONE, and the website for that band is Mophone without the apostrophe.net. So it's MOFONE.net. Let's see. There's a tune called, sorry. There's a tune called No Nugget.
No.
Here, I think I can play it for you guys. Let's see if that works.
Cool.
Hey, while you're pulling that up real quick, there's a couple of comments here on Facebook. David Betts, I've learned when we're talking about the bad gigs, he says, I've learned loads from watching Spinal Tap, and still crazy is not necessarily about music, but rather being in a band. And man, I tell you, I've been, every one of us, there's not one scene in Spinal Tap that I haven't lived through and gone, yeah, that's happened. And then, right. And then Kelly Ray Tubbs, hey guys, just tuning in. Your book is so well written, Jeremy. It is written in a way that is accessible for everybody, and I think we would all second that. So anyway, I just wanted to get those out there because they're not popping up over here on the stream yet. So I'm just kind of monitoring what people are saying on. Hey, there we go. So anyway, go ahead, play some of your music. I want to hear it. All right,
let's see if this works. I'm going to try sharing my screen.
Thanks, Kelly.
And see if it works. See if this works.
Don't kick us offline.
I'll try. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me try to just play it here first and see if it picks it up without kicking y'all off. Let's see.
Rick's jamming over there, man. He's ready to go. Rick should play us some second line. Rick could play some second
the clave.
line.
It might
hear that?
How's this tune?
There you go.
You hear that?
Anyway,
That's great. What kind of? I gotta ask. What? That's fantastic.
oh, thanks, guys. Thanks.
What kind of snare drum was that you were playing?
Got any guesses?
I
Ludwig Superphonic.
was gonna say Superphonic.
It's a
Or
black,
What?
Black Beauty.
Black's
Oh, I was this close, man.
Yeah.
I've got two of them right here. I've got two of them right
I
there.
have a Superphonic also, but that was a Black Beauty. Yeah.
That is awesome. Here,
Thanks, pal.
What kind of snare head?
Question, Rick. Were you raising your hand earlier?
I was just wondering what kind of snare head you're using on that.
Oh, that's an Aquarian texture coated.
Aquarian texture coated. That's the go-to for Jeremy Steinkoler.
Just sounds perfect.
Nice.
in case
You know,
anybody's
I
wondering what a Black Beauty is, there's.
Whoa.
Mine's got the triple flange tubes though.
Oh yeah. Man, the side stick on this drum,
Wow.
you
That's
can
killer.
dude, you can be 4 football fields away in this one. You'll hear
Yeah.
that one, man. That's a
Oh,
man. So anyway, that's a Black Beauty. That was a great sounding recording. Very. I was going to ask if it was actually a calfskin head because that's what it. Man, that sounded great.
Oh, you're Jeremy. You've got you're as far as endorsements go. You're with Brooks Drums, Aquarian drum heads, protection racket cases, and Vic Firth drumsticks. Is that correct?
Yep.
If you don't mind me asking, what brought you along? What introduced you to Brooks Drums? How did that come about?
Brooks Drums is a guy named Mike D'Amico, not of D'Amico Drums, but he did work for some other, I can't remember who it was, drum maker for years, and then sort of broke off and went on his own and created his own boutique shop called Brooks. And he's a Bay Area guy, and there's a bunch of Bay Area drummers that play his drums, and I'd heard them on some live shows, and I was like, wow, these drums sound fantastic, and they're gorgeous, and who is this guy? Where do these drums come from? I talked to my friend Alan Hall, who's a phenomenal jazz drummer. He just moved to North Carolina. And he said, oh, Brooks, go talk to Mike. And I called Mike and I was like, Mike, your drums are beautiful. I love them. And he said, come out to my workshop. I'll give you a little tour and I'll show you what I do, and we can talk drums. So I came out there. He showed me his stuff, and I was like, drooling the whole time. And I said, well, let's have you make me a snare. Let's make me a snare and we'll go from there. And he said, do you want, I was debating between a 5.5 and a 6.5, right? So an inch different in depth.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure what to do. And he says to me, I'll tell you what, I'll make them both for you. You just pick the one you want.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh my God, what a generous guy.
Wow.
And I had this specific inlay that I wanted in my snare, and he made them both just like that. I came out, he made them a little differently with different plies of wood. One had, the smaller one had reinforcement rings. Anyway, I tried them both, picked the one I wanted. And then I had to make me a kit. And now I'm at some point very soon, my wife doesn't know this yet. He's going to make me another kit.
Nice.
So I got to show you guys. Shoot. Hold on. Let me get that snare drum. Hold on 1 second.
That's awesome.
We also,
Oh, yeah.
Jeremy's also an endorser of Aquarian drum heads, and we share that relationship with the rest of our friends over here. Protection racket cases and Vic Firth drumsticks. So he's a pretty solid guy. You should check out jsteinkoler.com to learn more about Jeremy and his various projects that he's got going on. And here comes the snare drum.
So this is the Brooks snare, the first one.
Let's see it.
Nice.
Oh, wow, look at that. So you went with it's got tube lugs on it and everything?
Yep. So, everything's my specs, right? Just how I want it, just how I want it to look, just how I want it to sound. And then he made me this kit. That's just stunning.
Oh, it's
I
beautiful.
can't really quite appreciate it,
That's
but
gorgeous.
yeah.
Is that a 20-inch
Wow.
kick drum?
That's an 18. So that's
It's an 18.
this was sort of a straight up a dedicated.
It's an 18. He's a jazzer.
Well,
Yeah.
so here's something interesting, Chip. So all the guys that I play jazz with know me as a jazz drummer, and all the guys I play rock with know me as a rock drummer, and all the guys I play blues and funk with know me as a blues and a funk drummer, right? And that's cool. I got no problem with that. But it's interesting how people tend to know you how they know you, and you get sort of cast in this one light.
Mhm.
But I've played in rock bands all my life. Giant Led Zeppelin fan, and I just played a gig just before COVID, I guess it was, with a Little Feat cover band, a Little Feat tribute band
Oh, cool.
called Feet Prince. That was a killer gig. Great musicians. And then I play in a band called the
Wow.
Bait and Switch,
Wow.
which is it's basically like a Motown, R&B dance band. So we do like 60s, 70s, 80s cover band.
Switch
dance
Blues
band.
Band.
Cool.
The Bait and Switch blues band, yeah. And then there's Mo Fun,
Nice.
and
Nice.
I
play in a
think
group called-
Rick has a question. Rick's
Yep.
raising his hand down there in San Diego.
Yeah, Jeremy. Well, there's no doubt the key to your success has been diversity, and it's great that you're not pigeonholed, that you're known for so many styles, and I really think that key to your success has to do with the fact that you teach, you run the teaching school, you're an author, you've written charts. It's super diverse. And so there's a lot we can learn from following your example. One of the other things that you did mention is Bandworks, and I think some other teachers that might be interested in what's involved with that, like how you do it. So can you tell us just a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Bandworks.
Bandworks, one word. I started Bandworks with my friend Steve Gibson, who's a guitar player. He and I have been in bands together all, from 1993 onward. And he plays in that Bait and Switch band. And he and I were rehearsing after hanging out after rehearsal one day in 1993. Now, mind you, I'm 23 years old at this point. He's like 26. And we were talking about how hard it was for our students to find other people to play music with. Now, this is before the internet and before Craigslist. And the only way for you to find other musicians other than word of mouth was through answering an ad in the classifieds. And that's how I had met the band that I was playing in at the time. And we said, wouldn't it be cool if we got some of our students together and sort of coach them to play together? We could give them a handful of tunes to work on, a couple of charts. And so we sat up, that first night talking about this idea for a while. And then we went ahead and launched it a few weeks later. Sorry, I got the mower guys outside the window here. And we had our first band, and the two of us teaching this class together. We had rented a room in like what was a women's shelter during the day, and at night it was empty. So they let us come in and move all their furniture and set up a whole PA and drum set, and then we had to load the equipment out every time. We did that for a few months till we realized we needed to find a real home, and it was getting popular. And we worked with a group for 8 weeks. And then they put on a little concert performance at the end. And for the first couple of ones, Steve's and my band played with them, afterwards. They were sort of the open or whatever. And then it kind of got more popular and kept growing. And then we had 2 bands. And then we stopped playing. It was just coaching and letting the students perform at the end, adults and kids. Then we had 4 bands. Then we had 8 bands for a long time. Then we had 12. Then we had 16. Now we're up to 42 bands every session.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's great.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Wow.
This program sees over 1,200 students every year.
That
And
touches a lot of people's lives, man. That is so great.
Whoa,
Yeah,
man.
it's big. It's a
Beautiful.
Bay Area institution. We have 42 bands every quarter. We have 4 quarters a year, and then we also run summer camps all summer for kids. And during the summer, we see about 600 kids in our various locations for our summer camp program.
You
and
can learn more about that by going to bandworks.com, and there's also a Facebook page and YouTube channel too.
That's right. Thank you, Chip. And we even have like an annual awards show now where we pick the best of the best and acknowledge their practice and progress and achievement and have them perform. And we sponsor a day in the recording studio for all the bands that have written original tunes that they've performed in the course of their Bandworks thing. So we spend a day in the recording studio and let them record their originals. It's a pretty awesome program, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a guy named Stace Wright who runs the day-to-day, who's really helped us bring the program to what it is now.
That's awesome.
That's great. I do have a question. I also want to give a shout out here. Our friend up in Canada, Neil LaFortune.
Neil.
He says, "Good day, gentlemen." But he should have said, "Good day, gentlemen." A. right? So
Oh,
Hey,
I
good
got to give him a
day,
hard
eh?
time. Good day, eh?
Good day.
So my question for you is this: one of the things that we've really focused in on here is your drum set playing, right? But
Mm.
you, as I said at the beginning of this thing, you're a percussionist. Watched a thing in NAM when you were talking to Drum Talk TV. You're talking about some brushes you found at NAM. You are a percussionist, and you run a thing called the Bay Frame Drum Festival. Is that what it's called?
the Bay
And
Area Frame Drum Festival.
it is Bay Area. I just wrote down Bay Frame. So Bay Area Frame Drum Festival. What is that, and what do you play? That's fantastic. I was watching you play. That's so cool. What is that?
That's a brand new thing that just was launched for the first time this year, our maiden voyage. There's a amazing percussionist in San Francisco. Her name is Amy Molinelli. She plays the pandeiro, the Brazilian tambourine, and she's a monster percussionist. Let me
Yes.
know if that mower thing gets too loud for you guys.
Not at all.
And,
No, not at all.
So she and I teach at this camp, a music camp every summer called Casadero Performing Arts Camp, a family camp. And I've been teaching up there every summer for 27 years now.
Wow.
I was the director of the program there for 3 years, and it's a family camp up in the Redwoods in Northern California, where the family comes and they take all these different performing arts classes. So I teach up there a rock band that's like 30 people. So it's like a 30-piece rock band. I teach a 25-piece Motown band with charts and horns and singers and the dancing and the whole arrangement. And then you can also take all these different classes there. It's an amazing program, really, really cool. And I met this woman, Amy, up there, and she was teaching the Brazilian pandeiro. And, I also play the bauran, which is this Irish frame drum that I learned when I was in Dublin. Oh, I didn't mention this, but back in the 90s, I actually went and taught Bandworks workshops in Dublin, Ireland for a few weeks.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was fantastic. And the Edge from U2, the guitar player from U2, he came down, was the MC for our show. And I got to tour the U2's recording studio and talk to the Edge. It was pretty epic.
That's cool, man.
It was fun. Anyway, so Amy and I put this festival on called the Bay Area Frame Drum Festival. And it was just, we're supposed to be in person, but we ended up doing it online because of COVID. And it was workshops and clinics on 4 different frame drums from 4 different parts of the world. So we had a guy doing a workshop on the Indian kanjira and tabla, a woman who did a workshop on the gospel tambourine. Amy did the pandeiro thing, and I did the Irish bauran. Yeah.
That is so cool, man. I watched that video of you playing that this morning with the lady playing tambourine. And,
cool.
And you said her name is Amy?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going back and forth monitoring the Facebook stuff, and the just wanted to make sure that I said her name. That is fantastic. Now, Rick and Chip, do you guys have any closing questions here for Jeremy? Or
I'd like to ask if you have any 3 pieces of advice for younger drummers who are starting their path. Give us 3 little tidbits of tips that you would offer somebody who's new to the drum game.
My first piece of advice, and this really goes for anyone, anywhere, but especially for younger drummers or newer drummers, is follow your passion. We got a short amount of time to be on this planet to do whatever it is we decide to do, to spend our time. And if this brings you enjoyment and it helps you spread that enjoyment, you're going to become an inspiration, to others, because you're following your passion and finding your voice. So if you love it, just keep doing it. Don't worry about the people who tell you can't. I had plenty of people tell me I was never going to become a professional drummer when I was younger. I didn't have it, and that's just all BS. If you love it, you follow it, you do it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, it doesn't come easy. If you want this, you got to work at it to get it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of the work. The work is not punishment. The work is not obstacle. The work is the thing. And so you got to sort of enjoy the process, because you're never going to really arrive in the way that you might imagine when you're younger. Oh, when I get that endorsement, I will have arrived. When I get that gig playing at Madison Square Garden, I will have arrived. When I get on the cover of Modern Drummer, I will have arrived. I haven't done all those things, but I've done some of them. And you never feel like you're done. The horizon just keeps, moving higher or moving further away. And so all we've got is the process, and you got to enjoy the process no matter where you're at. There will be ups and downs. You'll have good days. You'll have bad days. You'll have good weeks, bad months. That's all fine. Just keep your eye on the prize, you know, where you want to get to from where you are. And if you just keep going one step at a time, you'll get there. Or
Nice.
you'll enjoy the process, and you won't even realize that you're there.
Nice.
Yeah. And third thing, subscribe
Nice.
to the Drummers Education Connection. That's good. But seriously, I'd say third thing is don't be afraid to learn from all different kinds of people. You know, people, drummers who are better than you, drummers who are not as experienced as you, gigs that are great, gigs that are terrible, teachers that are good, teachers that steer you in the wrong direction, books, videos. Like, you can get it from all different places, and no one's got the final word on what's right or wrong. You know, that's something when I was younger, I really kind of struggled with, I guess, like, oh, where's the truth? You know, trying to seek it out from the right book or the right teacher. And turns out there's lots of truths, and there's lots of ways you're going to get to it. And in the end, you're just going to find what works for you. You know, I've had people, you know, I've heard teachers on videos talking about, you know, if you don't hold the sticks this way, you're doing it wrong. Well, you know, tell that to Max Roach, who had a sloppy grip, or, you know, tell that to Jojo Mayer, who's got 5 different grips he uses, you know?
Yeah.
Stevie
Wonder, when he played drums, you know, how like,
yeah, you know, I mean, and nobody cares about all that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important, right? I mean, I teach it. We all teach it. This is bread and butter stuff. We teach technique and method, but like, in the end, nobody cares about that. They just care about the music, right?
Yep.
They care about the music you make, and does it move people? Does it connect with people? That's really what you're after, is getting deep into the music. And I don't care what sticks you use or how you hold them or how you play, just you make the music feel good.
Good
You move me when you play.
Kelly Ray Tubbs or Tubes. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. All capitals.
Tubbs.
Truth. That's what she Tubbs. Okay. Yeah, she said truth. Okay. Now let's throw it down to Rick, because he's trying to get a word in there and he's having a little bit of lag. So we're going down to San Diego again. Rick, what's your closing question or thought for our friend Jeremy?
All right. Hey, it's sunny and warm here, guys. Jeremy, look, thank you so much for all you do for the drumming community. And we couldn't do the Drummers Education Connection without you. We really, really appreciate it. And I just want to encourage every drummer to check out Finding the Groove. And I think your book goes beyond drumming, you know, in life experiences. So this is just a good read for anyone. I think it should be a top seller. So just where can people find it? And thank you.
First, thank you, Rick. It's an honor to be a part of this collective with you guys. I look forward to these meetings every week, and I'm always excited about what we're going to talk about and who we're going to talk to. And I'm honored to be the interviewee this week. So thank you guys for having me and for all these amazing questions. Really great stuff. The book, you can find the digital version on Hudson Music, and then the paperback you can get on Amazon.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Okay,
perfect.
so I think that is kind of wrapping it up for us here on the Drummers Education Connection. And man, you know, what an honor it is to be part of this and to work with such great, you know, drummers in this project. Jeremy, you, all three of you guys, Chip, Rick, Jeremy, today you were really kind of our focal point and a shining light to the drumming community and to musicians as a whole. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for, you know, taking the time to write a book like Finding the Groove and sharing a piece of you with so many people, and hearing your stories of being involved with Bandworks and working with so many people. I think that as teachers, we forget sometimes that we're helping connect music with musicians. We're trying to pull it out of them. And you have definitely touched a lot of people's lives, and you've definitely made a lot of people's lives better because of you being a drum teacher and just being here and being alive. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for doing all that. You're an awesome guy, and thanks for letting us interview you.
Oh man, it's been my pleasure, and thank you all for your kind words. I'm humbled by you guys. So really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for watching and for
Great
being
job.
a part of this.
Excellent.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
So next week, I will make a quick announcement that next week we're going to do an interview with our friend Jim Royal from Connecticut.
Jim Royal.
Yep. Royalty.
Royalty.
Connecticut power.
Yeah.
Jim. Yes. It's going to
Fantastic.
be awesome.
Fantastic drummer, educator, drum set player, steel drum player, marimba player, xylophone player. If it's percussion, he can do it and he can teach it. And he's the most positive
Awesome.
guy.
I can't wait.
Can't wait
I
to have
can't
him
wait.
on.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent,
Thanks,
excellent.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week here on
Everybody.
deck.
On the deck.